Cathie Wood versus Warren Buffett, who would you place your life savings with? We actually put this question to the portfolio management team a bit over a year ago on the 5th of March. And at the time, Cathie Woods' fund the Ark Fund, was about 100% ahead of Warren Buffett's Berkshire Hathaway over the previous year. Now, at the time, the portfolio management team was very adamantly in team Warren Buffett. I really want to revisit this topic because a lot of things have changed since we recorded that episode. So Baylee, can we start off with an update on the performance of these two very well-known equity funds?
Sure, yeah, and you're completely right. A lot has changed since then. And Cathie Woods Ark Fund is now down 70% from its peak. Meanwhile, Berkshire Hathaway has gained over 22%. Essentially, Cathie has given up all of the huge gains that she made in the previous years, so Warren is considerably ahead.
Normality has resumed, at least for now. So I rewatched the episode that we recorded over a year ago, and there were some strong views given at the time. I'm going to read out a quote from the episode. I think it's going to get much, much harder for Cathie Wood to be successful over the next couple of years. We also had the end of the episode was concluded with the very well-known Warren Buffett quote, "It's only when the tide goes out do you discover who's been swimming naked." So at the time, there was quite a strong view given. Things have changed a lot since then, Baylee. I mean, is it fair to say that in this instance, we don't always get it right, but in this instance, we seem to have gotten it right?
Yeah, I mean, to be completely honest, I'm not sure that any of us could have predicted such a sudden, sharp decline. And in that episode, we gave a few key points. So firstly, it gets harder to deliver returns as the assets that you manage get bigger. And secondly, the style Cathie used was very different to Warren's and was more about investing in disruptors rather than in those established businesses. Warren Buffett is regarded as one of the greatest investors ever, not just because of the solid returns over such a long period of time, but because Berkshire Hathaway has continued to perform well despite continuing to grow in size. On the other hand, Cathie Wood had a much shorter track record, had a very different investment style, and had only just gained a huge asset base. And we did expect that could cause some additional challenges.
Okay, so I mean, what are the lessons to be learned from this?
So I think there's actually two lessons to be learned here. First of all, this is a great case study in diversification. And even though we're talking about two equity funds here, you still need to understand where your returns are coming from. If your holdings are predominantly made up of young growth or tech companies, you're not diversified. And we've seen this with Cathie's fund. This year, these types of companies have struggled. And all of a sudden, lots of these companies within the funds have all started moving in the same direction. In contrast, the mix of investments in Buffett's fund is far broader. And most people will think of his fund as being quite old school with a lot of banks, insurance companies, and of course, Coca-Cola. And that's true, but it might be a surprise to some people that he also holds tech companies. But crucially, they don't dominate the fund.
Okay, so what you're saying is diversification remains king. You did mention there were two lessons. Lesson number two?
The lesson for me here is more about timing and investors' buying performance. A lot of ARK's flows came when the fund performance was at its peak. So a lot of investors didn't take part in that original rally and haven't seen those big headline returns. We do often see this, and investors buy past performance, and sometimes they don't actually benefit from the historical numbers. And these are behavioral biases, and we're all subject to them. But on our team, we do work really hard to try and avoid this, and we make more time for understanding where future returns are going to come from.
Okay, very good. I think they are wise words. Always be a little bit cautious about buying past performance, particularly when it's so incredibly strong in such a short period of time, which it was. I mean, it sounds like you and the team still remain in Camp Buffett. I still think there's a case to be made for Cathie. She's a very well regarded investor, and I don't think the story's over just yet. Although obviously in the short term, it's not looking so good. Baylee, we concluded the last episode with a well-known quote from Warren Buffett. He has many legendary quotes. And I thought it might be nice for you to conclude this episode with your favorite Warren Buffett quote. So anyone that springs to mind.
Well, there are definitely plenty to choose from, but I'd have to pick the stock market is a device for transferring money from the impatient to the patient.
Absolutely love it. Don't be greedy, be patient. It's really wise words and ties in very nicely with the themes and the lessons that you talked about today. Baylee, that is excellent as always. As I say, we may be revisiting this in a year's time and who knows where it goes next, but that was really interesting. We will be back next week. We will put a portfolio manager on the spot. We will ask the difficult question and we'll try to do it all in around about 5 minutes. Until then, see you next week.